Well, obviously, we're going to be talking now more about that breaking news this morning in the last hour. The news that Thames Valley Police have arrested Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, formerly Prince Andrew, on over misconduct in public office charges. We're going to be talking about that right now with Davies, former head of Royal Protection. Good morning to you, Di.
Good morning,
Julia.
Nice to be back with you again.
Well, I mean, again, extraordinary circumstances. It's the former prince's 66th birthday. He's lost his HRH, he's lost his prince, he's lost his dukedom, lost all his titles, lost his big fancy house in Royal Lodge in Windsor, banished to the Sandringham Estate, and now the indignity of police arriving at the estate on his birthday to search both his property in Norfolk and we believe the old property in Berkshire as well. And he has been arrested. He is in police custody at this time. Well, the police will say only a man in his 60s, but it's very clear from the footage of those on the scene that this is where they've been. What was your first reaction when you heard that he had actually been arrested?
Well, at long last, is my reaction. I've been calling out for this, frankly, for nearly 6 years, ever since the allegation emerged back in 2015. Now, I know there's a lot of evidence that has to be gone through, and he hasn't been arrested, as I understand it, for sexual offences,
exactly.
But malfeasance in public office. But that appeared clear to me when we got to hear about the fact that he allegedly had asked his deputy press secretary to make inquiries into Virginia. That could, in my opinion, amount to malfeasance in public office.
The term is misconduct in public office. Well, that's the interesting thing, that the allegations that we've been discussing against Prince Andrew, again, which he's always denied, he's never been charged with any crime, or not until this point ever been spoken to by the police, as far as we understand, about any alleged crime, that it's always been concerning Virginia Giuffre, the concerns about his relationship with a convicted paedophile in Jeffrey Epstein, and whether or not that he was part of the mistreatment and abuse and of these young girls and young women. Now, he's always, I must keep stressing, he has denied any wrongdoing, but what's emerged in the Epstein files in the last couple of weeks about with documents, again, if they are valid documents, if they are true, of documents being given to Andrew when he was UK trade envoy, acting, as the official trade envoy for this country, being paid, the Queen paid him a stipend. He had huge expenses for that role, doing that role for his mother's own government. If those documents are true, it appears he has handed over documents that are confidential to his big mate, convicted paedophile financier, which would have made them money. That goes much further. But do you think it's quite telling that he's been arrested on charges involving those allegations, it would appear, rather than the stuff we were discussing, the Newsnight interview and the stuff that's been on the front pages for how many years, and is the reason why he actually originally lost his HRH title?
Well, I think this is the beginning. And with any case, you've got to start with what appears to be either obvious or is there in front of you. This is just the start, I would imagine. And again, as you rightly say, he hasn't been found guilty. At this stage, it's quite right that the police, Thames Valley in this case, have gone all the way to Norfolk to arrest him on issues regarding misconduct. But misconduct can have a huge variance in what that alleged misconduct is. So without a doubt, they will be probing that. And as I understand it now, there obviously are 9 different police forces throughout the country that will have to be coordinated into a structure. So I'd almost put what they call a gold, silver and bronze. So in other words, you have somebody who says, right, this is what we're looking at, this is how we're going to do it, and then you delegated that to a senior detective to actually coordinate the 9 different forces and the various allegations going forward. It is a complex scenario, but I think we're at the very early stages of this investigation. But it's a high time. But the consequence, not only for Andrew, but for his family and also his brother, the king, and the whole royal family, is quite enormous. I've said before, I can't think in my lifetime, and that's quite a long time, of anything quite as serious. It's more serious than when Edward VIII was giving information to the Germans, in one sense, because it's today and it's dealing with today's issues, including his misconduct, as far as I can see, in respect of who he was giving that information to, who he was dealing with, and who in turn they were dealing with, either for the Chinese, for the Russians, to the Israelis. I mean, it's just a Pandora's box, as
Well,
I keep
indeed.
saying.
Indeed, and there's no circumstance, again, if these documents are genuine, if these emails are genuine, there's just no circumstance in which that would ever be something you would have even a matter of doubt on, working in that role, whether or not you could forward that information. And again, really, we'll have to wait and see how this develops. You talked about the consequences of the family, and it's something you've discussed with me a number of times since the Epstein files were published, and something also we discussed with Andrew Lowney, and I know you work closely with him on his book, and he's been very forthcoming that he believes this could even be the end of the monarchy. This could lead to King Charles having to stand down. There'll be a lot of people who are very, very wary of tainting the late Queen Elizabeth's name, but there's a lot of concern that she helped this huge payoff to Virginia Giuffre in the civil case. There's 12 million quid. Presumably that was money for her, and also legal fees and the like. King Charles also, then Prince of Wales, also contributed, I think, $1.5 million to that. Other family members as well, extraordinarily. A loan apparently, but that's never been paid back by Andrew. There are big question marks, as we've discussed a number of times, but for listeners who happen to have missed our conversations, the idea that Andrew was, travelling, seeing Jeffrey Epstein, working, as a UK trade envoy, doing what he's doing, spending time on, the Jeffrey Epstein's island, in his home in New York, inviting him to Buckingham Palace, and the idea that the royal protection officers, the idea that senior Buckingham Palace staff, and even, frankly, even the most senior royals were not aware of certainly the allegations and concerns is for the stars, isn't it? There's no question at all. They would have known.
Well, I think so, and I think I've said it on your program and others. Stop taking us for fools, frankly.
Yeah.
It's just inconceivable that if you agree to pay out 12 million to a female you've never allegedly met, and in those early days, these serious allegations were not quite there. Yes, there were allegations that he was, after he'd been convicted, that's Epstein, paedophile. Well, that's one thing. Now we have these incredibly serious aspects, and questions have to be asked in the palace. Who knew? Who briefed? Because every day when I was in post, I had a cutting of every media that came in that affected the royal family, and they would have the same.
Yeah.
So quite clearly, from early on when these allegations were made, senior palace officials would have known. And I allege, and I take no pleasure, but as an investigator, I allege senior officials must have briefed senior royals as to the consequence. And they've hoped that by doing what they did in paying her off, that would kill it dead. Unfortunately, all it's done is raise the mantle further. Yeah. Now, I would imagine that Thames Valley Police and the Metropolitan Police must, through the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, have been in touch with the authorities in the United States. They must have more positive evidence. They said they've been assessing. They've had nearly a fortnight to assess. I think they've been working 24/7 on this because it is so serious. Yes. And as Andrew Lowney says, there are consequences for King Charles if it can be shown either he or his private secretaries throughout this period were aware and advised certain actions or not. Then there would be consequences. And it's a sad indictment. But as we say, we are in uncharted waters. And if there is any evidence that he knew or he took part in any kind of deception or any other aspect, then clearly it would be an abdication matter as far as I'm concerned. And again, I've never thought in all my years again I'd be saying that.
I mean, there's no doubt at all that Charles and the Prince of Wales, Prince William, have long wanted Andrew to disappear from the family. That's been made really, really clear from not just palace briefings, but also from, should we say, Charles's quick actions once he was on the throne and able to take that action. But your view is that he may not have acted soon enough, and what he did, you believe, to help, well, at the very least, not to expose this, if not to cover it up, we don't know yet, will, at the end of the day, be an abdication matter?
Well, I said yesterday on a programme, it's a conspiracy of silence. And if you can show that silence was motivated by an attempt to deceive, then clearly there are
Yep.
consequences or concern. I can't say it more stronger than that. I don't have evidence of that. But as an investigator, if I was investigating, I wouldn't stop at the lower levels. I'd go all the way up.
Indeed. And just finally, Davies, I mean, you say, a conspiracy of silence. Do you trust now that the police, obviously egged on, the public demand, the King saying, we will cooperate with anything, any investigations and the like, and then I suppose pressure from the media and other politicians as well. Do you trust that there won't be another establishment cover-up? We will get to the bottom of this, and we will know exactly who knew what when and who did what when?
When you have the Prime Minister going on BBC saying nobody is above the law, I suspect he's had private briefings. I'd be surprised if he hadn't, because the consequences to the country are enormous worldwide. And my phone hasn't stopped this morning from people all over the world asking to speak to me on my view. My view is pretty much like yours. Where's common sense? Let common sense apply, and let the law apply to anyone who has either tried or has concealed information. It's called conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. That's my other saying this morning, conspiracy of silence. And then if it can be proved, if there was a conspiracy by others to hide his alleged dreadful deeds, then take the consequence.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Very, very harsh words there from Davies, former head of Royal Protection. Later in the show,